It's the season finale of another Zelda podcast, so it's boss battle time. David and Kate talk about the original bad boy, Ganon. Hello and welcome to another Zelda podcast. I am David Geisler, your co-host for this evening, along with my co-host, Kate May.
Hello.
Kate, how are you?
That's always weird to hear my new last name.
I officially changed you to Kate May in my phone just last night, actually.
I've been confusing my friends and coworkers for a while now. They're like, who is this person?
Who's Kate May?
Who's that?
And what happened to Kate Fischer?
It's still me. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good.
This is our season finale episode, season 1.
Whoa.
I'm very excited.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations on a full season.
I actually did something for a whole year. Wow.
Oh, it has been a blast.
I usually don't have that much self-discipline to do something for a whole year.
When we first talked about doing this show almost exactly a year ago, and I expect we'll just proceed season by season here. We'll just keep doing the same pattern. We'll start back up in January, probably go to the next holidays next year. I remember you being just a touch tentative about it. You were like, "Oh, I don't know, maybe a little nervous even."
Oh yeah, because I had never done anything like this before.
I'm so pleased. I'm so happy. It's been a pleasure doing the show with you.
I still like you as my friend. So impressive.
In fact, I would posit that we've been able to stay friends through the show because I come here to record every month and a half or whatever. I mean, we would have been friends, but we're hanging out.
We catch up.
Is what I'm saying. Yeah, catch up. Right, exactly. Otherwise, it would be that thing where it's like, oh, I haven't seen you in a year. How you been?
Yeah.
I haven't seen you in 2-3 years.
Oh.
Kate, I have a little gift for you here.
You do?
As a special thank you. Do you know what this is?
No.
I got you DLC for Breath of the Wild.
Oh my God.
As a thank you for doing a full season and a little thing. So
That's so nice.
I figured, so I picked up, so that's like a piece of cardboard. It's very ceremonious. There's technically just a receipt with a download code that I have for you. But I picked up the DLC because I want you to be able to experience it in our off season and going into season 2. So that's loosely compliments of our Patreon people too, by the way. I dipped into our Patreon money just a little bit to get you that gift. I hope you enjoy it. Now you can have, I know just before we started recording, you were saying like, oh, I was looking for dark spots where maybe I wouldn't go to a shrine.
Yeah.
Well, now you can use the Hero's Path feature to see where you have been and haven't been.
That's right. Oh, I'm so excited.
I can't wait for you to key that code in and have some DLC over the holidays here and into season 2.
That's so awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Well, thank you for doing this show. Because for me, this show is a bit of an investment in the company that I'm building, Sixfive Media. Mm-hmm. And so that's my motivation. But for you, it's mostly just hanging out and having fun and doing a show. So
yeah, it's pretty terrible overall.
So loosely, that's also compliments of our patrons. Oh, by the way, I think we have another message here.
Well, thank you, patrons.
Yeah, they didn't have any say in the matter, but I think no one would complain.
They're like, hey, I didn't spend my money on that girl.
Well, we actually use our Patreon money to pay for our servers and all of that kind of stuff and things like that. But I thought that would be perfectly, I felt no one would have a problem with that. We also, over on Facebook Messenger, David Bauer said, congrats on your wedding, by the way. I don't know if you saw that or not.
I didn't yet. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, he was chatting with me about a few other things. And then immediately after our music episode, it was like the day it came out. He was like, congrats on your wedding, Kate.
Aw.
Oh, I have another we have tons of listener feedback, but today we're going to be talking about Ganon. I want to just lay that out, and then we can do our listener feedback. I think what we'll do today, Kate, I have a list here. I think we should talk about Ganon through the context of the chronology of the timeline.
Cool. That's how I did my research. So that sounds
perfect.
good to me because it's kind of laid out that way when you go online.
Oh, yeah.
That's the couple places that I referred to. They organize it that way anyway. So it works out.
Cool. I think, technically, I think we'll still discuss Demise just a little bit in Skyward, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
But he's not technically Ganon, but in my mind, he is.
Right.
And then I think we'll go through to Ocarina. Perhaps we'll take a break after Ocarina, and then we'll discuss the 3 timelines after that.
Sounds good.
And how Ganon appears and doesn't appear in some of those.
And if I don't talk for a while, it's because I'm off playing Breath of the Wild expansion.
Well, it was so funny because before we started recording, you're like, oh, I just dipped back into Breath of the Wild. And I was kind of like, in 10 minutes, I'm going to give her DLC. I can't wait.
That's so cool. And I'm such a cheapskate, to be honest. I probably would have gotten it eventually, but not for a while, or at least not till maybe I finished it or whatever.
Yeah.
So this is like now giving me the inspiration to.
That's really what it was. It was, yes, it's a thank you for doing the show with me, but mostly I was like, oh, so many things are in stores. Now you can go download some, or you can go find some of those extra costumes we spoke about in the Armors and Outfits episode.
Yeah.
You have some of the new shrines. You can potentially get that motorcycle. And then also in season 2, we can both discuss Trial of the Sword and stuff like that. I'm sure we'll have an episode about that. So
it helps the show too.
I was so excited. To pick that up for you because I had a feeling I was like, she's not going to get this DLC for like years.
Probably not. My family's not going to see me this year at Thanksgiving. Sorry, guys.
Oh, really?
I'm going to be playing this now.
Oh, I see.
Because I have a 4-day weekend. So.
Oh, very exciting. I have an interesting note. I have a new job, as I think you know, and a very cool thing happened just yesterday at my job that I want to tell you about real quick, Kate.
Okay.
I was ending work or whatever, finishing work and chatting with a coworker, and their phone went off, and it was a Zelda tone, it was Saria or it was something, and it was someone was calling them, and I was like, oh, cool. And I think this person was even like, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, it's my Zelda ringtone. I was like, no, that's awesome.
Do not apologize.
Don't apologize. That's cool. By the way, I have a Zelda podcast. And she said, oh, really? Which one is it? And I brought it up I just brought it up on iTunes real quick. I was like, oh, it's this one. It's called Another Zelda Podcast. And this person, actually, this happened a day or two ago. I should change my story just a little bit. This person kind of looked at the icon strangely and looked at me strangely. And I thought, oh, well, maybe she doesn't listen to podcasts or something. I wasn't quite sure, but I was like, oh, yeah, that's what it is. It's cool. And then she was like, yeah, I think I might know that. Anyway, a day goes by, 2 days goes by. Yesterday, this coworker is walking past me in the hallway and says, so I have to tell you, I've been subscribed to your show on YouTube for months.
Shut up.
And so her name's Alyssa. So I just want to say hi to Alyssa from work right now.
Oh, that's so cool.
It was the coolest thing. It was this random thing. She's a big Zelda fan.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. I was thinking like, oh, just tell a few people. I don't talk about it too much at work, but tell a few people about this show. I do if it comes up, if it's appropriate. She was already a listener.
That's awesome.
Isn't that neat?
Small
Oh,
world.
I was so excited. That was really, really cool. So hi, Alyssa.
Oh, hi, Alyssa.
So let's see. I'd like to do a little bit of flat out listener feedback right now. We have a lot of comments from our music episode. People kept chatting in our comments that I want to go through with you.
Okay.
And then we're recording this finale, a little bit earlier than we normally do for episodes. This way it'll we're days before Thanksgiving right now. I'll pull the curtain back just a little bit, though this episode will be coming out much closer to actual Christmas. Okay. If if you observe Christmas, it's coming out very close to Christmas.
Late December holiday time.
Indeed. So I kind of early on, a week or so ago, I put out a tweet just saying like, hey, what was your favorite Ganon battle? Or what, so I have some things to say about that. We might still get some tweets. And so if you're listening to this and said, hey, I chimed in and it's after Thanksgiving, I apologize.
Sorry.
We weren't able to include it, but we'll happily discuss it at a later time. Perhaps we can continue the conversation on Discord or something like that.
Cool.
So with that said, I have a couple tweets here. Mostly it's just tweets today. A couple tweets about people responding to our Music of Ocarina episode, which was a very popular episode, actually.
Cool. I mean,
based on our analytics.
Everyone loves those tunes.
Loves those tunes. It's true. And I think what we could do is there were a few songs that we didn't speak about in that episode. And so maybe in season 2 or 3, we do like Ocarina Deep Dive or who knows what. Maybe we can. Oh, also, I'm going to do a poll.
Okay.
On what our next music episode should be. A lot of people are saying Wind Waker, actually, but I think I'll put maybe in the beginning of season 2, I'll put a poll out there and let people vote on what should be our next game that we discuss. Cool. I'm kind of excited, ironically, to talk about Skyward Sword music, but
I'm kind of excited after doing research for this episode to play that game again. It has a really cool story.
Skyward Sword?
Yeah.
I think it does actually have a good story. I wish it was a little more playable, but I digress. Okay, so still saying Shane, which is becoming a friend.
Yeah,
almost.
our buddy.
It's true. Shane said here real quick. Oh yeah, he just commented quickly. He's like, oh, while you were talking about the Zoras towards the end of your music episode, I was reading about the different Zoras based on the timeline that they fall into. Thought you might be interested in it, and I'm sure that we'll have a Zora episode coming up in season 2, like we had our Goron episode.
Oh yeah,
I think that is inevitable for sure. Digging podcast. Mentioned really quickly here, as an avid podcast listener and creator, I absolutely loved this episode. Again, this is the music episode. The entire Legend of Zelda music is on my iPhone, and I share the same thoughts you guys had while playing and talking. Really well done and a fun listen. Well, thank you very much, Digging Podcast. There, and that's at Digging Podcast. Mike Westfall, who's on our Discord, and also another gentleman who's becoming kind of a friend. We're starting to get to know some of these listeners a little more.
Yeah.
He said, oh, this might be about... Oh, yes, we are already transitioning into Ganon thoughts. So let's just do it. I think we'll go there.
Do it.
Oh, here we go. No, I'm going to jump down to Facebook for some more music. Cody Vanderfeltz said, good choices. My number one would be the Temple of Time song from Ocarina.
Yes.
Celeste Roberts, she mentioned the Shadow Temple or the Bottom of the Well. The harpsichord sounding part reminds me of spiders crawling about. Again, this is in response to me kind of asking what was your favorite song, or people just commenting on what we had to say.
Yeah, I can definitely see/hear spiders in that one. That one is just so many creepy things all at once.
It's true. It's absolutely true. Over on Instagram, a Luke to the Past, love that screen name, said, I always loved that the bongos are playing in the Shadow Temple. Music. It makes it seem as if Bongo Bongo is just waiting for you. And if it's one's first playthrough, finally seeing him sort of explains the music in a way.
Sure.
Awesome episode, guys. Hand clap. Yeah, absolutely. That's cool too. A Luke to the Past. I think that's a great thought. And actually, just recently, Tandem Legends came to a similar conclusion. They're playing through Ocarina right now, and they noticed on their episode that the bongos are playing in the music, and that might be a connection to Bongo Bongo.
Oh, sure.
Which I think is great. Frankenstein over here on Instagram, Frank NST3IN, who I actually met randomly through work. It was very interesting. Anyway, so he now listens to the show. Thank you so much, Frank. Frankenstein said, great episode. Song of Storms is definitely my favorite. Some great metal and dubstep covers come from that song.
Oh, I think I've heard some of those. When you go on YouTube and you look for Legend of Zelda Vines, which I totally have before, because I've talked about them in one of our episodes that I don't know if that's come out yet.
No, I think it has. The Vine. The only thing that hasn't come out as of this recording is our funny things.
Oh no, that's the one I'm talking about.
Oh, it wasn't
so
there?
Yeah, I'm going to mention some vines and funny things that I found online on that episode. But when you search for those, because there aren't too many of them, people tend to also put in like music remixes like that and like little animations that go with it. So I've definitely heard the Song of Storms like EDM kind of, yeah, because that's often the song that they animate too.
Interesting. Well, it's a good song. I think, like I said, Saria's song is kind of the most recognizable after the main theme. Song of Storms is one of those where I think a lot of people do know it, but they don't think about it right off the bat. All right, let us. We're going to start talking about Ganon. Oh, by the way, if you want to tweet us or contact us on Instagram, you can find us at Another Zelda Podcast on Instagram and at Another Zelda Pod on Twitter. As we talk about Ganon today, if you still want to chime in and have some thoughts about some of your favorite Ganon battles or ways that Ganon was expressed in any Zelda game, please feel free to tweet us, as I said, at Another Zelda Pod as we discuss.
Because there's a lot of stuff to go over. I'm sure we'll skip or miss something, or people want to elaborate more on something.
It's true. And we're going to be gone here for a month or so. We're going to be in our off season. So perhaps I invite people to go over to our Discord channel and continue the conversation there with us. Again, you can find our Discord by clicking the link in our show notes or going to our website, anotherzeldapodcast.com, and finding a link to our Discord there.
Perfect.
Or you can become a patron, actually. Patreon people get automatic Discord connection, and our top tier on Patreon actually unlocks an elite Patreon channel, an elite Discord channel where we can have conversations exclusively with some of our top tier patrons.
And we'll tell you all of our secrets. I don't know.
Yep. No, that's in there. We're going to have to add that to the Patreon description now.
All of our secrets.
Kate said it. All right. So, pardon me. Transitioning into Ganon, I think what we'll do is I'm going to ask you to talk about Ganon a little bit in just a moment, but I'm actually going to front load our Ganon conversation with our listener feedback, and then we'll just dive into it. Does that sound all right?
Cool.
Okay, so on the note of Ganon, I asked everybody, just on Twitter, kind of quickly, I said, hey, what's your favorite interpretation of Ganon? Fall West Mike, which is Mike Westfall, we now know from Discord, he said this one, and he sent us a link of a picture of Ganon and Link sword to sword at the end of Twilight Princess. He sent us a GIF, and I agree completely. I think that is easily one of my favorite interpretations of Ganon. And I think someone said, and I might come up to it here in social, but someone said somewhere about how that Ganon or the Ganondorf Link battle at the end of Twilight Princess is really, it's mano a mano. It's sword fight at the very end there, which I thought was really, really cool in Twilight Princess, and we'll discuss further when we get to that point.
Absolutely.
At Ergtenstabd, at URGTNSTABD, said, it has got to be Wind Waker. The 3 phases of Puppet Ganon are so creepily amazing, and the final battle with Hyrule flooding is so cool.
Agreed.
Any thoughts? Yeah.
Very cool. Yep.
Yeah.
Those 2 already. Yep.
The flooding is really dramatic. Those huge waterfalls that are coming down on the side. We spoke to this a little bit in our Wind Waker episode already, I believe, but definitely cool. Puppet Ganon was a very interesting interpretation, especially because Wind Waker was the first game that kind of used actual physics in a Zelda game.
Mm-hmm. I liked that battle was both frustrating but also really cool at the same time, I remember. I
agree, absolutely. Annoying Chase, that's funny, at Annoying Chase says here, Twilight Princess, this is it. It felt like an actual duel against Ganondorf. I struggled against him the first time, and it felt so rewarding after I finished him. I also love his details as a character. He has quite the demanding presence. Mm-hmm. I agree. Pardon me, I have a little cough. Annoying Chase also then says, my second favorite would have to be Demise. His lust for destruction as well as his terrifying looks are spectacular for a villain, let alone a god. I love his character design as well. Very well made. I expect we'll be talking about Demise very shortly here, so I'll save that. And then Amalu said, my 10-year-old son's favorite was Legend of Zelda. I think mine is Phantom Ganon from Ocarina's Forest Temple. Loved how he came out of the paintings.
Yeah.
I think that would count, Phantom Ganon. I didn't initially think of Phantom Ganon when I was doing my research, but I agree. That's a really cool moment.
Yeah. I mean, it has his namesake, so why not? Let's include it.
Yeah, and I think Phantom Ganon originally was going to be a more final boss. So that entire Forest Temple boss battle with Phantom Ganon, the pictures, that atrium that you're in or whatever it is, originally that was built very early on in the development of Ocarina of Time, and I think it was going to be expressed somewhere else, actually in like Hyrule Castle, and they ended up using it in the Forest Temple.
Yeah, I think we touched on this briefly in maybe the Forest Temple episode where they wanted it to kind of be more like Mario 64.
Okay, that was episode 2. I'm sorry to interrupt. That was episode 2, way back in the day when we were just baby podcasters.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes. So you were saying, yes, it was going to be more like Mario 64?
Yeah. I think, you told me that.
There was the painting theme. I know. Yeah. Because I interrupted, I wanted to throw it back to you. I apologize.
So, yeah, but I think Phantom Ganon totally counts because he's, quote unquote there. He is laughing his gross laugh at you, and I would count that as like a mini Ganon battle.
Averdin7 at Averdin7 over here simply said Ocarina of Time. It had both, and I deduced that Averdin7 means Ganon and Ganondorf.
Oh, sure. Yep.
Which is the first. Ocarina is the first time we actually meet a Ganondorf. It's been Ganon all the way up to that point.
He's so casual until then.
He's just chilling, taking over, manipulating the king there for a while, and all of a sudden he gets
Dave versus David.
What, me?
Yeah.
Whoa, what is this comparison? I don't understand.
You're casual Ganon, and then you're David Ganon.
Wow, interesting.
I just mean it seems silly. I don't understand sometimes why they refer to him as one and then another at other times.
Well, Ganon is the beast, and Ganondorf is the person.
Oh.
Is the basic idea.
I probably could have put that together.
So Ganondorf will sometimes turn into Ganon. It's like Ganondorf is the human version, and then sometimes when the human version's life form or being is destroyed, then Ganon, the spiritual Ganon, the beast, comes to be.
Gotcha.
Oftentimes, though in Twilight Princess, Ganon happens first. Anyway, last but not least, Nerdy Girl 1241 who has tweeted us a few times here, said she just chimed in real quick with Twilight Princess. I think she was kind of agreeing with our tweet from Fall West Mike.
Gotcha. Cool.
So we've laid the groundwork.
Yeah, let's get into it.
I think we're going to talk about Skyward Sword first here.
Okay.
But is there anything you'd like to say? I know you have. So I got a text from you the other day. So we were talking about a week ago about this episode, and you were asking me like, okay, what's the structure? What are we doing? And I said, okay, I think let's do Ganon from Demise on. And you were like, cool, if I may. And about a day or two went by, and I got a text from you, or maybe it was a Facebook message, but I think it was a text or an email. I can't even recall. It doesn't really matter. And you were like, so many Ganon notes.
So many notes. I have like 4 pages.
I'm so excited right now. I have basically the layout and the outline here with a couple notes, but you have taken the deep dive. I cannot wait. I hope that I learned some things from you today. So let us start with Skyward Sword, unless there are some general Ganon things you'd like to speak to first. We did not, on purpose, we didn't pre-plan exactly how this episode will go down.
The only general note I had, which was like a fun fact, is that he's 7 feet 6 inches tall.
Whoa.
I found that online.
Interesting.
And that like, it's weird because it corresponds, like, I think when I found something that said like one of his little figures is in a certain scale. And if you do the math on that scale, it works out to 7 feet 6 inches tall in real life, quote unquote. So apparently he's a very tall guy. Although in Wind Waker, I thought I remember him being short and squat. But maybe he's
wider in Wind Waker, so maybe he's still tall. It's hard to tell because Link is so short in Wind Waker. So
maybe in general, he's usually 7 feet 6 inches tall. I just thought that was a really funny, and that's according to Hyrule Historia, apparently. So that's a really interesting thing that they would be very specific in terms of his height.
Well, I would say that the Twilight Princess and Ocarina Ganon certainly feel that they're expressed that way.
Yes.
At that height.
Yep.
Cool.
And he's a ginger. That's funny.
So Ganon is kind of technically not in Skyward Sword, but the spirit that becomes the energy source that is Ganon and then eventually Ganondorf is Demise.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about Demise? I feel like I'm going to learn some stuff right now.
Well, so in doing the research for this episode, I just kind of enjoyed reading the stories because Ganon is always part of the main, storyline in some type of way or another. Yeah. For most games, not all of them. Because sometimes he's been vanquished and he's not in the game very much or whatever. Yeah. But it was just so cool to like go back and read the legends. Because sometimes when you're playing it, at least in my case, I'm involved in the story, but I'm not really like thinking about it. And so not until I was like reading all of it in a paragraph and like reading it as like a story, as a short story, did I really like appreciate how everything came together. Ooh. So the story of Demise is basically this thing or person or however you want to phrase it broke through the earth and was searching for the Triforce, but it was defeated and sealed away by Hylia and then Link. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to like figure out how to explain all of this.
Yeah, because so many things to talk about.
So many things. So
it's kind of funny because as I look at your notes, I'm seeing you scan through like 12 bullet points.
Right.
And
there's
you're probably
a lot.
trying to like, which one? What do I say first?
So then you have the imprisoned, right? So that's the
blobby scaly thing.
The weird blobby scaly Muppet thing that Link has to go back and defeat 1,000 times, which is definitely not my favorite part of that game. The fact that you have to do it so many times.
It is definitely my least favorite part of that game.
Yes, not a huge fan. But eventually, and then you're also obviously fighting Girahim, which I don't even know if I put it together in the game because I haven't played it in a long time. And I think I've only played it twice total. Is Demise's sword. Right. And I was like, well, duh, that makes sense when you think about it because of Fee or whatever. Yep. So it's like the parallel there. So basically Girahim is his sword and he's trying to steal Zelda's soul to resurrect Demise and make him more powerful. So it's really odd that like the sword is
the active one there.
Right. For the master. Whatever.
Well, in Skyward Sword, both swords are kind of sentient, basically.
Right.
Fee has
the
a little
name
bit
of the game, I guess.
Skyward Sword. Oh, yeah. Right, of course. Did you know that when they were first developing Skyward Sword, Miyamoto has said that he was seriously considering removing the sword altogether from Skyward Sword, ironically? the sword mechanic of having Link when they were first developing the game. Certainly it didn't end this way.
Yeah.
But the very first concept art that was ever released for Skyward Sword was Link standing, not holding a sword. And Fi, I don't know if it's Fi or Fi.
Okay. Whatever.
I feel like it's Fi, but I'm going to say Fi. And Fi is standing in front of him. And nobody knew that was his sword yet in that concept art. But they were seriously considering, could you make a Zelda game and have Link not hold a sword?
Ooh, I don't think that would have gone over very well.
Yeah, I think ultimately.
With the general populace.
I agree.
I don't think that would have worked. But so after Link defeats Girahim, Demise uses Girahim as his sword and uses Zelda's soul to transform into the Demon King, which then you can kind of get the Ganon-esque vibe from him at that point. And to be honest, I never got to this battle in the game.
Oh, okay.
I never got there because
it's after a huge monster gauntlet.
That's the
Wind
part.
Waker.
Yes, that's the part that I always got stuck at.
Mm-hmm.
I have never gotten past there, so I've never beaten this game and never gotten to the boss battle.
Wow.
So after a while, I was just kind of reading what happens that I didn't even know about. But
I'm feeling a season 2 review here coming up.
Oh, for sure. I would like to get there, and I like the rest of the game enough to try it again.
Skyward Sword, that'll be our quote unquote Wind Waker of season 2.
Oh, right.
Like we'll really dive into it and discuss it.
Gotcha.
Anyway.
So apparently, and I say apparently because I haven't played it yet, or this far yet, but he has an X-shaped scar on his forehead.
Yeah, yes.
So that's similar. That's like a commonality throughout the game, I guess, is that he either has like a jewel or a scar or something on his forehead that's his, weak spot, obviously.
Interesting.
So yeah, my last note is I never got to this battle, sad face. Ask Dave.
Well, I have a confession. I've never fought Demise either.
Oh, dang.
Mm-hmm. I've done a lot of research on Demise, and I've watched a few little playthroughs to see what it's like, but I never made it through the Monster Gauntlet either. In fact, my final fourth of Skyward Sword is all very hazy for me because I was really getting to a point where emotionally I was a little worn out on the game, to be honest.
Well, so listeners out there, tell us your experience in terms of getting through that dang gauntlet and then getting to Demise.
I will be happy to discuss the actual Demise battle, like I said, in season 2, when no doubt we play Skyward Sword.
And we just push through until we get there.
You're gonna have to do it. That'll be the reason where it's like, oh, gotta do it for the show.
Yeah. Well, it'll be a cool little surprise because I didn't watch a YouTube video on it either because I kind of wanted to stay in the dark about it until I got to it.
Yes, definitely. I apologize. I have only watched clips because I don't want to get spoiled on the strategy of playing, of battling Demise.
So I guess he has the X-shaped scar, but then he also has flaming red hair, which is, a nod to the red hair. So it's definitely tied to Ganon for sure. It's not a stretch to say that.
Yeah, or one could even say that Ganon is tied to Demise, but yes.
Yes, and then at some point he claims that his hatred will not end.
Yep,
and will be reborn. So obviously,
which is a little bit of retconning of Nintendo being like, "I will return next time, Gadget." You know what I mean? A little bit of "I'll come back."
Ganon always comes back.
And so Ganon, even though he might be, corporally different beings in different Zelda games, the through line is that it's the energy and spirit of Demise feeding and coming back out of the crust or whatever each time as Ganon, I think is the idea.
Do you think he is more powerful than Zelda and Link because he's being defeated in every game but comes back anyway?
Interesting. I don't know. I remember, what I've seen of Demise, just visually speaking, he is an intimidating presence. Even more so than I think Ganondorf in Twilight Princess. Mm-hmm. He's got a mean face. Let's just put it that way. It's you look at that face and you're like, that thing is not giving up.
So the whole, Triforce and the triangle and how it's equal and balanced, it makes so much sense for this game series and it's so convenient for them. It was smart to do the design that way because it will always be equal, right? So everyone will keep coming back over and over because their power is when maybe equal, although I feel that's why I asked about it. I feel like there's something about Ganon. He keeps coming back, even though he keeps being stabbed in some kind of body part in a serious way, brain, stomach, wherever he gets skewered, he comes back anyway. So I feel
I'm making this up right now as I go. I feel that that's kind of how they've they've been able to make this work. What I mean by that is this is a very clever way for a player or Link in any of these stories to defeat the physical Ganondorf, but it's a way to have like the spirit, again, it's just, you can't defeat the spirit that then goes back, you can only contain it, right? And then so eventually 100 years goes by, 1,000 years goes by, and the spirit finds a way to come back is usually the idea, I feel.
I wonder if he's going to come back in a future game ever looking different, or like picking a different, because he's usually a boar or a pig or something like that.
Yeah.
If he's ever going to come back as a different animal.
Well, speaking outside of, not canon, but outside of chronology, Ganon was a pig for the first couple games. It wasn't until Ocarina, which was maybe the fourth, I think, in the release order, where they decided to make like a human version, which was Ganondorf. Yeah. And they're on, now, so timeline wise, we see a human form, fairly quickly. So him being a pig, I feel like it just they have to keep him, Ganon, looking like a pig. When you think he has enough powers to change that fact, though? So the expression of the pig kind of changes. Sometimes he's almost a literal pig, like in The Legend of Zelda for NES. Sometimes, like in Breath of the Wild, he's kind of a literal boar. I feel that he's kind of a boar in Twilight Princess.
Yeah, but sometimes he's on 2 feet and sometimes on 4.
Yeah. Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild, he's down on 4. The earlier games in release order, he's on 2. He's just like a nasty pig-looking guy.
It's interesting to see what he comes back as every time because, Zelda looks more or less the same. Yeah. Link definitely looks the same for the most part, but Ganon changes a little bit. I think more than the other two, at least.
Yeah, I agree. I would say that Ganondorf is the equivalent to Zelda and Link. Like he usually looks pretty similar, has a similar, comparable aesthetic. Ganon, that might be something that's in between Demise and Ganondorf now, if we're looking at it this way. That is when Ganondorf is defeated or something happens where he goes a little bit more spiritual, that's when the beast form is summoned and apparates or whatever it does. Not apparates, but comes to be.
Harry Potter.
Comes to be. And that's maybe like something in between Demise and Ganondorf. And again, I'm really kind of just pulling at strings here, trying to bring it together as we talk about this.
I mean, he did. Well, we'll get.
So being spiritual, maybe he can be expressed. That's why he can look a little different, is what I was trying to say.
Gotcha. And we'll get to Wind Waker eventually, but he's not only a boar in that game. At the end, he's a couple different things. So.
Oh, that's a very good point. That's a good point. And the other thing I can think of is Yuga Ganon in A Link Between Worlds, where he's kind of he looks a bit more like Demise. He has the big flappy, floopy hair and stuff like that. When we'll speak to that after our break.
Are we going to do Ocarina of Time before the break?
Definitely. In the timeline here, then Minish Cap happens and Ganon is not to be found. Four Swords happens and there really isn't a Ganon situation. We have other characters. I think it's Vadi shows up in Minish Cap and later we'll have some other side characters show up. So Ganon, I guess, never really comes to be until Ocarina of Time if we're going timeline.
Yep, that's what I have next.
Wow, interesting, because that's the split. He's the one that comes and mucks it all up.
He really, really is. Well, I mean, he always is, right?
Yeah.
That's his job.
Very interesting.
Muck it all up.
So Ocarina of Time happens. We first meet Ganondorf in the game. That's what we meet first. Ganondorf is really present. Ganon comes second, not the other way around.
Yes. I'm trying to remember. So
first time we see Ganondorf is talking to Zelda very early on in the game.
Through the window, right? Okay, so that's what I thought. I was trying to remember if there's anything in the cutscene.
Oh, you're right. You're right. We might see him in a cutscene before that.
Or at least, I mean, there's probably a mention of evil or an evil force or something like that.
Him riding through the fire and the flames is in the cutscene that happens in the castle when you first talk to Zelda. So that might be the
yeah. Okay.
Link might have a nightmare seeing Ganondorf on the horse now that I think about it. Coming out of the castle.
Oh, darn. We're just going to have to play the game again.
Shucks.
Oh, shoot. But yes, you do see him through the window and she's saying, check that guy out. He doesn't seem all that right? She's like, tell me I'm not crazy.
Yep.
He seems a little weird, right? I don't trust that guy. So you see him and I remember being creeped out by when he turns and looks at you through the window.
Ooh,
when I was first playing the game, I was like, ugh.
My heart skipped a beat when child David, I was like,
he's definitely a good guy, right? So yes, he is definitely trying to influence the king and conquer the land because he will never be satisfied with what he has.
Posited that he even kills the king, even though it's not directly stated in the game.
Well, he certainly does his fair share of murdering throughout the other games. So I would not be surprised. So the story, the whole story of Ocarina of Time, you see him through the window, and then he's basically following Link along to get to the sacred realm because Ganon tries to get these spiritual stones and he gets rebuffed by the things that are guarding it. So he either poisons them or ruins them in some kind of way because he's not a nice guy.
Right.
And so Link gets the stones instead, goes to the sacred realm to get the Triforce or whatever. And then Ganon just kind of follows him in there, sneaks through the door and tries to grab it himself.
It's kind of like the Belloc from Indiana Jones thing. He goes and lets Indy goes and finds the things, and then Belloc just goes, "Thank you, I'll take that."
Exactly. So, but then the Triforce breaks into 3 pieces because it is not happy with that situation. Scenario.
Also, I think this is the first time that we really truly release order have like a 3 triangle Triforce. This is the first time in release order that I think Nintendo really decided to kind of make the Ganon, Zelda, Link balance thing.
Sure.
By the way, I think retroactively it shows up a little bit in Minish Cap, the 3 Triforce, but that game was made after Ocarina. But anyway.
Right.
So this idea of the Triforce being angry and doing all those things, this is all very, very new in the storytelling.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so it kind of takes on a mind of its own. And so, as most people know, each piece goes to each person, right? So Ganon ends up with the Triforce of Power and he uses that to take over the castle, make everything gloomy and terrible, puts the zombies in Castle Town.
Yeah, that's right.
It's always a bummer when I get to that point in the game because it's obviously this big, climax of the game. You get to the Triforce and all of this happens and then you're like, oh, everything's sad now.
So when you travel forward 7 years, it feels like very triumphant, feels good, and you get there and everything is bad.
Yep.
And in kind of a slow way, not bad like buildings are burning. That doesn't happen until a little bit later.
Right.
But I remember coming out of the Temple of Time 7 years later and being like, what? Wait, what? Nothing. It's just a ghost town.
Yeah.
And I think you expect more. And it takes an hour or two, I think, for anyone playing Ocarina to really kind of get back into the game at that point emotionally, because everything is so down.
Yeah. You're just kind of like defeated. Like, oh, I did not do the right thing.
Yeah.
Even though I had to do that thing.
Oh, and by the way, I was just thinking, I think actually the Triforce as 3 showed up in A Link to the Past in Super Nintendo because it's in that opening animation. And we'll get to that later. So I don't want to be... I was so excited to talk about the Triforce power in Ocarina. Maybe it's expressed a little more in Ocarina, but I think it technically shows up in A Link to the Past. Anyway.
Gotcha.
So we have the Triforce, we have Ganon. I wonder in Ocarina, I was thinking about this just now. I wonder if Ganondorf is aware that he can become Ganon. Like, I wonder if Ganondorf, we're talking lore here, with the retroactive Skyward Sword put in there and everything. I wonder if Ganondorf is aware that he is possessed by Demise. I'm wondering if Ganondorf is aware that he can turn into Ganon. I'm wondering if Demise doesn't actually really infiltrate Ganondorf until Ganondorf becomes Ganon at the end.
Ooh,
see where I'm going with this?
How much is he in control of his own thoughts and what he wants?
Because Ganondorf was the king of the thieves in Ocarina.
Right. I mean, you get a little backstory there too, is that he was ostensibly born a human or human form, right?
Or maybe a Hylian technically, but I don't know.
Right. And he was raised by the
Twin Rova.
Yep. Our favorite witchy ladies. So they were his mother. So at that point, you're like, well, how much is nature and how much is nurture here? Because obviously they were not a good influence on him.
Right.
But then he had, Demise working through him in some kind of way too.
At some point, Demise comes in and takes over Ganondorf. And I just thought about this. I was like, maybe he's just a bad dude. And Demise picks up on that and is like, oh, there's a tool that I can use. Though I think Ganondorf, and we don't really know this, we're getting kind of push up the glasses nerdy here right now. But like Ganondorf has the imprint of the Triforce on the top of his hand, just like Zelda and Link do, you know? I wonder if he's had that his entire life or if it appeared one day, because it's implied that with Zelda and Link that it's been there their entire life, I think, right? Like, the Triforce starts to glow.
Right, when they're near it or when they're near each other.
Yeah, and would the Triforce glowing on Ganondorf somehow symbolize Demise's intervention or whatever, or like involvement?
So many thoughts.
I don't know. Well, this is that moment. This is the moment where so much of this stuff gets built is in Ocarina.
Yeah. So, and like we mentioned a little earlier, you fight Phantom Ganon at the Forest Temple. So that's him coming through the portraits on horseback, and you have to shoot the arrows and whatnot, and it's a little creepy, and you're like, okay. That battle gets you ready for the final one too, because it mirrors. He's shooting.
Yep, the volleyball thing.
Yep.
Or the tennis thing,
yeah,
basically.
Which comes into many games. And then you also have your cutscene where he's going after Zelda and Impa, and she throws you the ocarina. So my question, after the 7 years have gone by, if he's so actively like trying to get the Triforce, it seems like he's just waiting after these 7 years. And he's just hanging out in his castle, just waiting for Link to come to him, right? Or well, because Zelda's there, right? So he has to.
No, I think you're onto something here. This might be one of we have observed in Ocarina of Time over the course of this season that sometimes there are things that happen in the game where you're like, oh, maybe, let me say it this way. Perhaps in this day and age, the teams of people that make these games are larger and maybe have the ability to pay attention to more details. And I think, sometimes in Ocarina, we've been like, well, that's weird that Twinrova goes to a heaven. Or
sure.
like, oh, that's weird that in Ocarina, this, like 7 years pass, but nothing happens. I'm sure that at a meeting, and I mean all complete respect to the developers of Ocarina, I can imagine a scenario in a meeting where they're like, yeah, we want a time mechanic where there's an old Link and a young Link, and we can do all these things. And, okay, cool. Yeah. So 7 years goes by, and maybe they just really, I don't think it's a plot hole per se, but that might be the gameplay taking priority over the narrative a little bit.
Sure. You have to make some allowances because I'm thinking about it. So obviously Zelda's in disguise and teaching you songs, as you do when the world is going to end. You learn songs. So I'm like trying to remember the point, because Ganon obviously needs Link and Zelda there together so he can have the complete Triforce, blah, blah, blah. And
I think that's the answer. Ganon is waiting around. Link disappears for 7 years. From Ganon's perspective, Link disappears for 7 years. From Link's perspective, we just go bloop.
Oh, so maybe he doesn't know that Link is back when he's back?
He may not know he's back yet. And as Link goes around to all the different towns in Ocarina, he does discover all the damage that Ganon has been doing.
Right.
Everything has been affected by Ganon, or Ganondorf, I guess. But I think that's what it is.
That makes more sense.
Ganondorf might actually be waiting around.
And then he does take Zelda at some point and, traps her in the crystal thing. And
so Ganondorf first realizes that Link is back when Link defeats Phantom Ganon in the Forest Temple. But by then, we've had 7 years of damage happening to all the other areas as well. Is that, you see where I'm going with this?
So,
Because Ganon
so then finally
speaks to Link via telepathy.
Yes.
After the Phantom Ganon battle. He's like, oh, you defeated my ghost thingy. Oh, what a waste of a robot ghost.
Yeah. I worked so hard on that robot ghost.
Yeah.
Dang it. Well, this is just when we don't have to talk too much further about it, but
you're like, let's move on, David.
It always amuses me, and this is in movies too. It always amuses me when you come to the king or the evil boss or whoever it is, and they're just like hanging out, sitting on their big chair, just like, what have you been doing this whole time? You're just like sitting, like watching TV. What are you doing? It just seems so funny when they're just waiting.
Yeah, because the narrative needs them to be the finale.
Sure.
But no, I'm agreeing. You're right. It's funny how it's like we just allow these stories to have that.
So the boss battle in Ocarina of Time, the final one. So I always liked when you get to the castle. I liked the music. I like his theme. It's weird and creepy and cool. So that
you're speaking like when you're going up the big staircase about to find Ganon.
Yes, and the music gets louder and louder, and the lighting gets like golden coming through the windows.
Yes,
and it's
so cool.
It's so very dramatic.
And that's diegetic music. You're hearing the organ because you're getting closer to him playing the organ, but you don't really know that yet.
Yes. So he has some time to like learn the organ.
Oh,
while
yeah.
he's waiting around. Maybe
he's been working on his organ skills.
Maybe getting lessons or something from his witch moms. Maybe they were organ players.
Yeah. Until you defeated them. But
right. Yeah. That's why he's so mad.
Yeah.
He's like, my organ lessons were not complete yet.
That's
really, I hadn't learned all the Beethoven.
You know, I think we found the main drive of Ganon through the entire series. End of episode.
Goodbye, everybody. So you get to there, yes, and then he's playing his organ, and then you battle him in the castle itself, where the floor drops out, and you play your volleyball, like you said.
Yeah. I just noticed he's already flying in that. So he already has some kind of spiritual presence or abilities or something if he's flying around and floating around.
Yeah, for sure.
He's already not just a person.
Yes.
So maybe he's been getting stronger. Maybe he's been training for 7 years.
Oh, sure. Organ and
what's the Ganon version of Ocarina? There's a whole game in those 7 years from the reverse perspective.
That'd be cool.
There's like a Maleficent version of Legend of Zelda where it's like Ganon's like, someday that jerk's coming for me.
He's like the Karate Kid, training, ready to battle Link whenever he decides to show up. And then after you beat him there, which I've always found that battle in particular to not be that difficult.
Yeah.
You just go back and forth.
It's more scary. Like it's one of those battles where you're more like, what am I supposed to do? The floor is falling. But at the end of the day, the execution of it's not that hard.
Yeah. And I think you can fall to the bottom
Definitely.
too. And then you can just climb right back up.
You have to climb up. It takes a while.
Yeah. Which I have a penchant for falling off of things in video games. So I definitely fell down there more than once.
I'm remembering that fall now. And I'm remembering the fact that you have to climb back out is almost worse than insta-death. It's almost more like, all right, take a heart and just start me over. But you're like, climb.
Well, there is stuff at the bottom of that, though. There are pots with hearts and magic potion and whatnot.
Yeah, you're right.
So, I mean, it's not the worst situation, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. And then he gets all mad when you beat him, and he decides he's going to collapse the castle on you. And I always thought that was a cool part of the game, too, because you have a timer, which, does drive me crazy. But it definitely gives you enough time.
There's easily enough time. But it adds the tension. It Metroids you a little bit like, now there's an alarm. Got to get out. Everything's falling apart. Got to get out of this base or whatever.
There's definitely a sense of danger there. Did you ever get to a point where the castle collapsed on you?
I've never run the clock out.
Time? Okay.
No, I don't think I ever have.
I don't think I did either. So I should probably do it on purpose sometime just to see what happens. And I do remember standing at those doors where Zelda has to open the thing and being like, hurry up.
Get over here.
So slow. And then you have to battle the different enemies before you're allowed to progress and blah, blah, blah. So then you get outside, the whole castle collapses neatly into this little circle.
Yeah, it actually does.
It's like implodes on itself.
Yeah. I want to speak about the castle collapsing real quick. One more thing. I feel like that's one of the first would be an accurate statement of these kind of cinematic chase scenes that we see all the time in games like, what's the Indiana Jones knockoff for PlayStation where the Uncharted.
Uncharted, yeah.
Yeah, Uncharted has these a lot. Other games have these. Sometimes God of War has them like this, here's the action set piece. You're still playing. You're running from the helicopter or this building is falling apart. You're running through this building. That happens in those games. I remember being completely taken with this idea of the castle's falling apart. It felt like a cutscene, but I was still playing it. It was very, very exciting and a really cool way to amp things up.
You'd be like, this is still going. I thought I beat him, but no, it's definitely not over yet.
Exactly.
There are technically 3 parts to this battle.
It was very cool. And I want to just point out that I think that's one of the earlier times that something like that happened.
Cool.
Where it's like you're almost playing the cutscene.
Yeah, absolutely. And then
So neat little circle.
And then you're battling him. You get your sword removed from you at that point. It gets he tosses it away or whatever.
Well, what happens is I think Ganondorf is basically defeated. I don't think you battle Ganondorf after the castle collapses. It's I think it's implied that he collapses with the castle. The castle collapses on him. There's a little bit of rubble. But it is ominous, and Zelda and Link talk a little bit, and that is when Ganon comes up and out.
Yes, and then you have
and that's when he smacks your sword away, I believe.
Yeah, and then you have your final battle.
Oh my gosh.
Which is super cool. I am now remembering that cutscene too when they play him you can't see me, but going, Rah! and like swinging his arms around.
And those swords are so big.
I know. And his name is like the biggest thing on the screen. It's just like Ganon.
Yep.
Like,
and he does that pose. He does like the T pose where his arms come down, his swords are out, and then the lightning flashes behind him.
It's a big deal.
And you can't quite see the whole character model. You see glowing eyes. You see the silhouette of the horns. And you're just like, this demon beast, there's no way I'm going to be able to battle this demon beast.
All right. And I think to this day, I still have some difficulty with that portion. It's not the easiest thing. Yeah,
it's weird for me. It's hit and miss. Some days I really am keyed in and it's an easy little battle. And there's other days where I just can't get the timing right.
So however long it takes you to succeed at that, then you finally defeat him. And
well, you focus on his back end, his tail or something. Isn't that right? You try to get around behind him and then you can make him fall.
You're shooting your arrows of light into him. And
that's right. The light arrows, which is a callback or a reference forward, a callback to the original The Legend of Zelda, where you also need the light arrows for Ganon.
I think I was reading there were like silver arrows though, right?
Oh,
in other games,
right.
it's either silver or gold and some kind of.
They're not called light arrows in there.
Yeah,
you're right. But light arrows in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, and so they've changed, but they're always basically the same thing, right?
Special fancy arrow.
Yeah, special fancy arrow. That's what they should be calling them. Hello.
Well, I understand that's what it was called in Japan, and then when they translate, I'm joking. The localization team was like, let's make it a light arrow.
So the interesting thing in this one, in terms of like the end and how they carry on the story, is apparently he says he'll destroy Link and Zelda's descendants because he has the Triforce of Power. So that's kind of the nod to be like, we're going to make more games, wink, wink. And this is how he's going to come back, wink, wink. So,
yes.
So that is the end of his story in that game. And then this is where we branch to different timelines.
3 different timelines, which we will explore when we come back from the break.
Sounds good.
Cool. I'll see you in a minute.
Okay. Bye.
Hey everyone, David Geisler here, and I am very excited to share that we have just launched our Patreon page for Another Zelda podcast. Patreon is a great way for creators to grow their content, and we're really looking forward to using this space as a way to say thank you to our listeners. We'd love to have your support, and we've put together some rewards that we're pretty excited about. Things like additional uncut bonus content, custom wallpapers, and of course, early access to all of our episodes. So if you like, after the show, head on over to our page at patreon.com/AnotherZeldaPodcast. You can also find a link to the page in our show notes. Thank you very much. Hey everybody, David Geisler here, and I would like to just take a minute to tell you about a new show that's coming out from Sixfive Media. I am very excited about it, and I'm actually here in the studio with the creators of said show, Max and Jordan. Gentlemen, how are you?
Doing great. Extremely enthusiastic.
I appreciate the enthusiasm, Max. Why don't you tell our listeners, my listeners, what this show is and what it's going to be all about?
So it's a sketch comedy show. We have sketches from 2 to 5 minutes, and they're going to be released next year at some point.
That was very matter of fact. I love it.
Also, he failed to mention it's called The Top Hat Balloon Show. That also as well. That's the title
of the show.
It's fantastic. I'm super excited for it to start releasing and everyone to be able to see it. It's been a pleasure, an honor and a joy to be making it with my friend Max here.
It has been. I've been seeing the rough cuts come in, and I'm very excited about the show coming out as well. So, listeners, this will be coming out in January, so kind of close to the beginning of season 2 of Another Zelda podcast. You'll be able to find it on the internet just by searching The Top Hat Balloon Show, and we'll throw some links in our show notes as well here on this show for you to go check it out after the holidays. Gentlemen, thank you so much for making the show, and I'll catch you later.
Thank you, David.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, we are back from the break.
Hello.
Kate. Whoa, howdy, Kate May. I'm just saying it over and over so I can continue to get used to it.
Kate May. It's not hard to say. I'm sorry I made
Kate
that
May,
right.
not hard to say.
I'm sorry. I didn't. That was bad.
That's what you got to put on your business card under the little notes and descriptions.
Kate May. Not hard to say.
So, Kate, I was looking at this 3 timeline thing here on our break, and I'm feeling, if you're okay with this, why don't we, so we've just got done talking about adult Link defeating Ganon in Ocarina. Why don't we stick with adult Link and move forward on the technically the adult timeline in the Zelda timeline here,
cool.
which would actually bring us to Wind Waker.
Yes.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right. So timeline-wise, many years pass, perhaps hundreds of years pass. Adult Link, as we know him, he finishes his life off very happy. Perhaps we could deduce with Zelda, and that's all very exciting. In the meantime, that crazy thing where, actually, the flooding is because of Ganon. Isn't that right?
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So
kind of before Wind Waker starts, there's a little bit of pre-story that involves Ganon.
Yeah, so basically so from what I remember, he, comes from the desert and he's tired of the desert and he wants to take over the lush green lands of Hyrule because he's jealous of what he doesn't have, basically. So to prevent that, yes, the gods or goddesses or whoever it is, I forget exactly.
I think it's the three goddesses. I think it's the three from Ocarina.
That would make sense. Mm-hmm. They flood Hyrule to save it from Ganon overtaking it, which I don't know if that was the best route to take, but because there's no hero to battle him, they're like, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, so Ganondorf, he kind of starts showing up against, and they can see the writing on the wall.
Uh-huh.
There is not a Link.
Right.
No hero.
No hero.
And so then I understand that Hyrule stays flooded for quite a long time, so much so that it becomes normal life to be living on these little islands and the ocean.
Yep. And then so Ganondorf goes to his Forsaken Fortress. That's his island of choice. How appropriate, the Forsaken Fortress. He didn't choose
he named that. Like, who named that?
Well, maybe, yeah. He didn't go to Paradise Island or palm trees and bananas.
Hyrule looks amazing. It's lush and green, and that's what I want. Oh, you take it away? Okay, fine. I'm going to go pout in a tower.
Yeah. Made of rocks.
Yeah.
Wah, wah.
Why didn't he go to Outset Island or something? He's like, this'll do.
He makes poor decisions. What can we say? He makes a lot of poor decisions.
So that is why Hyrule is flooded. The Hyrule from Ocarina of Time, as we all know, is under the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And New Hyrule, which is not exactly true because we don't actually get New Hyrule till Spirit Tracks, kind of starts to, life goes on.
Right.
Up on top of the ocean.
Right.
So that brings us to Wind Waker.
Yeah. And they're, I guess hoping he just stays on his island forever.
Yeah, that's true. He kind of just, again, hangs out.
Yeah, just hangs out. He is, rebuilding his army throughout this. So he's still trying to take over the world. He's just not very fast or good at it.
And I would say in this way, he's doing it in the physical creature way. I mean, he might be imbued with some magic, but he's basically a guy building troops.
Right. A guy with his red hair and beard and his little robe.
In fact, I now remember in our Wind Waker episode, you and I spoke to the point that this is perhaps the most human we've ever seen Ganondorf be.
Yeah.
He is kind of just a guy.
Yep. And he is looking for girls with pointy ears. That is his goal.
Yep.
Because I guess he can't get more specific than that. So that's how Link's sister gets kidnapped, basically, because the bird that Ganon is using to be his minion thinks that she's Zelda, basically. He's trying to find Zelda, so he's like, steal all the girls.
If they got pointy ears, bring them here.
It's probably Zelda, right? I mean, when you think about it, there are 2 people that match this description in the game.
Well,
so
that's true. That's
sense.
interesting. Because from looking at it from Ocarina's perspective, the pointy ears, the Curie have pointy ears.
Yeah, and there are
Hylians
girls there.
Do.
It's just that in Wind Waker, there aren't that many
normal people
female
in Wind Waker.
characters.
Well, yeah. I
Humanoid.
mean, that's a flaw in the game itself. They didn't make many female characters.
So the hunt did not take very long.
Tetra has pointy ears, probably.
Right. Yep.
Obviously. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to track the lineage of Link in Wind Waker and his sister, and wondering if they're coming from Ocarina's Link's heritage or something like that.
Well, yeah, because
it'd be many generations later.
Do you think, because he has his grandmother, right? And she tells him the legends or whatever and the stories, and this is why you have to wear this outfit and blah, blah, blah. So do you think she knows more than she's letting on? And she's like,
I think
Link
she
was
does.
my granddad.
Like we could pretend that, Link from Ocarina, adult Link from Ocarina was her grandfather or something like that. If that's the lineage. Or they just have pointy ears.
Yep. Who knows?
I don't know. We can only deduce the bloodline.
Yeah, not everything has to make sense in these games.
Indeed. We have learned that.
So, anywho, so you get through the game, blah, blah, blah. You I'm trying to remember all the things.
Well, you
that
meet
happen,
Ganondorf halfway through. Oh, there's a Phantom Ganon again early on. Oops, pardon me. My phone timer just went off. You meet Phantom Ganon, I think quite early on when you do the whole blade back and forth volley thing. And then you really actually meet Ganondorf after the big bird battle. I think we spoke about this in our Wind Waker episode. That's the first time you really lay eyes on him.
Yes, because so you're trying to put the Triforce together by searching all over the ocean for it. So once you have all that, you want to go and try to defeat Ganon once and for all.
Well, Ganondorf shows up before that Triforce quest. After the bird battle, that's when you first meet him, like kind of in a cutscene, and he talks. You run up to him, and he smacks you back.
Oh yeah.
Remember that? Mm-hmm. And he's also kind of just chill and hanging out. He's mad, but he's just hanging out there in his fort. And I think that's what drives the Triforce quest. That's when priorities change a little bit for Link. At first, it's like once he summons the three gods and the Tower of the Gods comes up in Wind Waker, then things change a little bit, and it all gets really real because Ganondorf's like, "Hey, Triforce."
Yes, and because I'm reading this and reminding myself, the Master Sword doesn't have power anymore. That's what it is.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
I had to remind myself. Like,
there always is kind of a Master Sword intermission in each of these games.
Yes, so you're trying to bring the power back to the Master Sword, basically. So that's why
because you're not strong enough to defeat him, and he knows it.
Yes.
That's what it was.
Although why he doesn't just kill you then, I don't know.
You're not strong enough.
Yeah.
So see you later.
Yeah, so bye. I guess you can go.
But that leads us to the Ganon/Ganondorf battle. And I think technically Ganondorf never becomes Ganon in this game.
I'm trying to remember. So
it's a technicality, but Ganon is expressed as Puppet Ganon.
Yep, you have the puppet. So you have the spider version and then a dragon, which is what I kind of alluded to before when we were talking about he's not always a boar or a pig. So
that's true.
Spider dragon guy. And this battle was really cool aesthetically. I remember thinking it looked really cool. I hated the mechanics of the dragon because it just like ran around like random and bashed me into the wall 1,000 times. And I was getting really frustrated. But after you get to that, after you beat that point, you go up to the rooftop. I love that there's always a tower involved in climbing up to the roof.
Yeah, sure, right.
So then you actually battle Ganondorf.
And see, Puppet Ganon, it might be controlled by Ganondorf, but Puppet Ganon is not a Phoenix Rising or a spiritual version of Ganondorf. Ganondorf stays Ganondorf through that entire game. He stays just a dude through the entire game. Now, I think Puppet Ganon is imbued with some magic. Obviously, that's why you can have like Puppet Dragon Ganon rolling around. But I think for the most part, they try to express that Ganon battle as something that's actually physically being controlled by ropes and wires and stuff like that, as if it is a major contraption, not using much magic.
Yeah, so he's just messing with you.
Yeah, so I'm directly saying that Ganondorf is Ganondorf through the whole game. I don't think he ever actually technically is Ganon.
That sounds right. And
so we see him up there, up top.
Yep, and then you have to do that the battle with the waterfalls that our listener was talking about, and that one was just really cool looking as well. I remember playing it and just having a lot of fun and being like, yeah, this is awesome. Like getting really into it.
I agree.
And
the light arrow comes back.
Yes.
Though I think it's Zelda shooting it this time. You have to make it so that she has the opportunity to fire the arrow.
Yes, you have to like get in the right angles so that she has the chance to.
It's a cool twist because usually she just throws you the bow.
Yep. I like when she's involved.
You know, it's interesting. We just kind of said like, oh, shucks, there aren't that many female characters in Wind Waker. But actually, Zelda's slightly stronger. But she does get trapped halfway through.
I know.
It goes back and forth, doesn't it? Tetra's a cool, strong female character.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish she was present throughout the whole game.
Yeah.
But she's got to get taken at some point.
I was trying to say like, oh, it's cool that Zelda is able to take a little more action. By it's her firing the arrow.
Oh yeah.
But anyway,
absolutely. I like when she's involved.
Grasping at straws there a little bit, I think, but it is cool.
Yeah. So basically, once you stab him in the head, which I remember that being pretty graphic.
If it wasn't cartoon graphics, it's very violent actually.
Yeah.
But it's cartoon graphics, so it's not maybe as bad.
So you basically turn him into stone by doing that, and then
I think the reason it's so violent, I'm just hung up on this, is because he freezes. He doesn't like fall to the ground and explode in a bunch of smoke. shove a sword through his skull from high a bit with a lack of taste. Link like goes up and does a cool move and comes down.
Yeah.
And he just is frozen. Ganondorf is just frozen solid, and the implications are very violent.
Yes.
Like, oh, why is this thing frozen? Is it, there's metal going through brains? It's, fortunately the game doesn't go there, but like that's what's implied for sure.
Oh yeah. And, goes back to that whole.
Oh, the forehead thing.
Forehead
Kate just
thing.
made a motion to her forehead.
Yep. Sorry.
Yeah.
People listening can't see that. So at that point, the ocean just fully drowns Hyrule.
Goes all the way up.
And
that's actually in that timeline. That's the last time we see Ganon.
Is it?
Yeah, Phantom Hourglass. It's Bellum.
Oh yeah.
And Phantom Hourglass is at a point where there isn't a new Hyrule yet. Everyone's kind of disparate. There are some islands that have started to form a little bit more. Like people have cultivated islands a little bit, whereas in Wind Waker, I remember a lot of the islands being a little bit more. I don't know if I would say rural, but little towns.
Yeah.
Not a lot of stuff. Where in Phantom Hourglass, there's steam ships and a little bit of technology, and people have cultivated the islands a little more. And last but not least, then in Spirit Tracks, they actually find a new continent, and that becomes New Hyrule in that timeline, and that's where that timeline ends. But I don't believe
still no Ganon?
that we get Ganon at all. I think it's Bellum for both Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass.
Yeah, because he just dead.
So
I
that's
guess,
interesting. In that timeline, the last time we see like a spiritual version of Ganondorf or Ganon or like Demise is kind of Ocarina.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, because it's just a human in Wind Waker.
So I wonder if getting defeated in Ocarina of Time, it takes away that element.
It's interesting.
Where he's just left a dude.
Now, I think that Demise might, if we really want to stretch this, Demise might be involved with Ganondorf in Wind Waker, whether Ganondorf in Wind Waker knows it or not. There's some of that energy, that spirit is probably coming from there. Does Ganondorf in Wind Waker, Ganondorf never flies or leaves the ground or anything, I think he stays a physical, normal person through that whole game.
Some people will have to let us know if that's not true, but yeah, that sounds right to me.
So, let's switch it up to Link defeating Ganon in Ocarina and traveling back to his child form.
Okay.
And having that timeline move forward, because this is going to get kind of exciting. We get to talk about some of the games that I enjoy for sure. I guess technically the adult timeline, this is a bit of a stretch, but like technically it comes back around onto Breath of the Wild where Ganon comes back. But that's going to be true for all three timelines.
Yeah, I was going to ask when we were going to talk about that one, if we were going to talk about that
Breath of the Wild?
Yeah. Because
let's include it in this timeline then, because I want to finish with the original games at the end of this episode.
Okay.
So next is Termania with Majora's Mask. No Ganon to be seen. Moving along brings us to Twilight Princess.
Yes.
We might have a bit to say about this.
Yeah. Well, a lot of our listeners had things to say. They really like this one. So basically the story of this one is he gets put on trial and sentenced to execution by the sages, right? So his fate is seemingly sealed. But he survives his, execution. They try to stab him again because people like stabbing him a whole lot.
Yeah.
So in the stomach, I think this time.
You know what?
But
I wonder if in the child timeline. Okay. Is the child timeline Link after the big fish? What's the big King Jabu Jabu or whatever? Not King, but Jabu Jabu. The big, the Zoras. You have your three gems in the beginning of Ocarina. Forest, the Gorons, and then the Zoras. At that point, that's when Link travels forward in time. Are we to understand that Majora's Mask maybe doesn't include that second half of Ocarina, that it's Link just not traveling through time after Jabu Jabu? I don't think so now that I think about it, because Link is looking for Navi in Majora's Mask.
Oh.
And Navi leaves in the Temple of Time at the end of the game.
Yep.
So all the adult things happen. He does defeat Ganon, but then travels back to a timeline where Ganon hasn't come to be.
Right.
So in some ways, the Twilight Princess Ganon is what Link has in Ocarina.
My brain is so confused right now.
Okay, it's okay. It's okay.
So many stories.
I guess Ganon rising to power in Twilight Princess. All I'm trying to say is Ganon rising to power in Twilight Princess in that timeline is the first time that Ganon has done this since Skyward Sword.
Gotcha.
Because technically Link experiences Ganon in Ocarina of Time, but timeline-wise, Ganon doesn't happen yet in this timeline. So in many ways, Twilight Princess is now the Ocarina's it's that.
Sure.
So he has come to be
Yes.
in Twilight Princess. I never put this together before.
Yeah, because I think in Twilight Princess, it's the same kind of thing where he's the Gerudo thief king. And so it's the same background and the same backstory.
You could say that Twilight Princess happens... Well, years go by, many, many years go by between Ocarina and Twilight Princess. That's not the same Link. That's not like an adult version of Link. It's a new Link.
Right.
So maybe it takes Ganon a little bit longer in the child timeline for reasons, but he comes to be, and he gets locked away, as we learn.
Yep. So they attempt to execute him. He survives. And because the sages don't know what else to do, they send him into the Twilight Realm to be imprisoned there. So while he's there, he meets his homeboy Zant.
Right.
And basically manipulates him, uses him as a puppet.
It's like his cellmate. He's like, you know what would be cool? Is if Hyrule got taken over.
For me. Thanks. Thanks, bud.
Zant's like, yeah, that's right. Do I get a cool helmet? Because I'll do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they have some kind of deal.
What was Zant's motivation? I'm starting to forget because there's that bait and switch halfway through Twilight Princess where Zant's like, actually, Ganondorf's here also.
I think he was just like promised powers, his fancy special magic powers.
He comes from Twilight,
yes.
Zant, doesn't he? So, So, oh, wow, isn't this interesting? So Ganondorf gets thrown into Twilight in the same way that he takes over the Gerudo in Hyrule. He's just working his magic over in Twilight Realm, manipulates Zant. Zant's like, cool beans, let's go to Hyrule.
Yeah. So he sends Zant to Hyrule basically because Ganondorf, whatever, he can't go there himself.
There's an entire story there in Twilight where Ganon is manipulating Zant, I feel like, that we don't get to see. But anyway.
He's like a really good politician or something.
I feel like he is.
Yeah. He's a very charismatic guy. And it's weird because it's not like he would have a lot of power. I mean, he's stuck in the Twilight Realm, right? So it's not like he's super powerful there, I wouldn't imagine. So what is Zant like seeing that is so...
Yeah, you're
intriguing, and so
Ganondorf's just a good manipulator.
I guess so. So Zant goes after Link and Zelda, as you do in the game. Someone's gotta. You get to the point where you're defeating Zant. So most of the game is about Zant, right?
Yeah,
and him and Midna have their thing because she, wanted to be in. She was supposed to be in power in the Twilight Realm and she's not, and she got kicked out, and a lot of people got excommunicated basically or turned into beings that weren't their true selves. And so she's trying to restore the Twilight Realm, but also kind of take over Hyrule herself in a weird way.
Really?
Right?
Tell me about that. I don't feel that way.
Don't you think?
No, but I want to be convinced.
Because she's always like, oh, it's so awesome when the Twilight is part of Hyrule. She she's not trying to be evil or anything like that, but I always thought it was odd. It had a weird tone to it when she'd be like, oh, I just love the Twilight so much. And it's so nice here when it gets creepy and weird and I like it. And
like when you're in the Twilight, in Hyrule, but in the Twilight. Yeah. I think some of that is because from the story, like from the creators of the game, the developers, I think they want you to not know if Midna is good or bad for a long time. So I think they might be tweaking that dial up a little bit.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
But with that said, I think also Midna, of course she likes the Twilight more. I don't know if she's trying to have Twilight take over Hyrule.
That was a bad choice of words. Not take over, but maybe integrate or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
But anywho, so then you get to Zant, and I think I've only beaten this game once because I always had a lot of trouble with the Twilight Realm portion of it with that glowing ball that you're carrying around multiple times. I hate it. Hate it. So
much to love in Twilight Princess, but that part is a little rough.
Oh, that's the worst. I wish I could skip it very badly. So after you defeat Zant, then Ganon possesses Zelda.
Yes, it's true.
And it looks so creepy and so weird. I did watch a YouTube video of that just because it had been so long since I got to that point in the game. So then I watched it and I was like, ooh. And then so you're battling Zelda at that point.
Which is a structural callback to Ganondorf and Ocarina.
Yes, because it's more volleyball, tennis, whatever, with the magic power going back and forth.
Yep. And she's even floating around like in Ocarina.
Yep. And she is using her sword in that case.
Yeah.
So at that point, once you defeat her, that's real creepy and weird. Because
doesn't she have crackle marks on her and stuff like that?
Yeah. Yes. So you can definitely tell she's evil. She has the weird glowing eyes. And then when you defeat her, she goes, oh. Like it's
yeah.
A really deep voice scream. And it's
because it's technically him.
Right. It's
that's
real
cool.
Weird.
I remember that.
So then he turns into the boar.
Yeah.
This gigantic thing. So at that point, you turn into the wolf form.
Mm-hmm.
So it's already cool. Like you've already had two really cool elements because I like that they brought back the wolf link portion in some kind of way. It makes sense, beast against beast.
Yes. This is a well-designed final boss battle, all of its phases, and we're kind of touching on that. It's a very well-designed boss battle because it's employing many of the techniques that you've learned in the game.
Yes.
Well, one of which is about to happen as you describe this situation.
Yeah. So you are in wolf form and you use Midna to grab onto him and like throw him to the side. And then you go.
Which is one of the first things you learn in the game with the goats.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you use it with the Gorons.
Yep.
And so it's a callback from that to that mechanic.
Absolutely.
Super cool.
Mm-hmm. And at that point, I think he has a crack in his stomach or
something like that.
Something like that, right? Like a wound that you go after.
Slice that belly.
Yay! Everything's fine. So then after you after you beat that portion, which is kind of repetitive, you just kind of have to do that a bunch of times.
Yeah, I think it's like the 3 times or whatever. It's the 3 rule.
It's always 3. Yep. Then he becomes a disembodied head on fire.
I do
Briefly.
Not remember that.
You don't have to like fight this one, but that's what he becomes. Like he keeps changing forms. So that's what he becomes next, and that's when he like defeats Midna and is like, "Get out of here!" and throws her.
Interesting.
So then
this is my favorite part.
You get to the horseback.
Oh, I love this part.
Portion. So then
it becomes a chase scene.
Yeah, the music changes. The action ramps up, and you are chasing after him, trying to defeat him on horseback.
Again, doing mechanics that you've learned throughout the game.
Yep. There are quite a few horseback kind of chases or action sequences in that game, I remember.
That was the first game development cycle-wise that you could attack from the horse, from Epona.
And they really took advantage of it.
I love it. I love it. It's cool. You're driving Epona up next to him, trying to slice and hack and all this stuff. He's trying to get away. Very cool.
Do you have light arrows at that point?
Oh, I can't remember if she gives them to you before or after the chase. I honestly can't remember.
Okay.
Maybe you do, and you're trying to fire the arrows at him while you're riding, but I remember swinging my sword at him, but I could be mistaken.
I don't remember.
Doing a little bit of side-to-side battle. But anyway, so I think maybe you get the light arrows as you leave the castle. Maybe you have them. I can't quite recall. But I remember chasing Ganon. I remember swinging my sword. Perhaps you shoot some arrows, and eventually you get him knocked off the horse.
Yes.
And at that point, then a fire wall comes up, which apparently Ganon is very good at making.
Yeah,
and
it's his thing.
It's almost like Marvel's Civil War, where the big battle actually comes down and becomes really tight and confined. Mm-hmm. And even though he's been a huge pig, even though he's been a disembodied head, even though he has transformed into all these different things, at the end of the day, it comes down to you and him sword fighting. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's neat because it's not just him coming after you. You knock him off his horse, so to speak. And then it's like, oh, got to finish the job. Like, this is one of those battles where it actually starts big and gets smaller.
Oh, yeah.
Technically.
Yeah.
But the tension or the stakes get bigger. That's why I really love this battle so much.
Well, especially because you don't want to do all of it over again if you die.
That's true. Well, this I remember once I got to the sword fighting with Ganon, this is where you're almost like drag out in the mud, like you're both tired. You're both like, this is a battle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's really cool.
Let's end this.
A little bit.
Yeah.
And there's cool moments where there's, the swords are getting pressed against each other. And I don't know if you have to button mash or anything.
I think you do. Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit of quick time stuff, which was very popular around that time.
Yeah.
And then if you defeat him correctly with your sword mechanics, there it is.
And then you see Midna's true form, and it's a cool ending to that game. It's so cinematic. I love it.
I wonder if Zelda shoots the light arrows at him in this game as well. It's hard for me to recall now. But anyway.
But
very cool.
So that's it. So that's a lot of people like that one the most, and it makes sense because I mean, gosh, how many parts is that? Like 4 phases?
I always remember it as 3 main phases, but the truth is, I think it's almost 5 with like little connected interim phases.
That's crazy.
And
it's a lot of effort to
true.
defeat Ganon in that game.
It's true. So then that actually brings us to Four Swords Adventures for the GameCube, which I am still keeping my eye out for this game. I'm looking forward to a day. I don't know if it's going to happen in season 2 or season 3, but I have just now in this episode decided that it should be you, myself, Alex Sheehan, and Lizzie Alstad playing this 4-player game together sometime, some evening, some weekend. We'll get us all together.
Yeah.
Either in season 2 or 3, and we will play this game. I have played Four Swords Adventures. You need 4 Game Boy Advances. You need the GameCube. You need all that stuff.
Oh my
gosh. I remember having a very good time with it, actually. And canonically, it happens after Twilight Princess. And Vadi is the big bad in this game, but it's a little bit of a Twilight Princess Zant situation because right at the end, let's see here. I have it in my notes. Ganon shows up at the end. And so, I know what it is. Oh, no. I'm thinking of Oracle of Seasons and Ages.
So apparently he's reincarnated and kind of replays his life as the Gerudo member.
He kind of comes. He just comes back around at the end is the basics for Four Swords Adventures.
Gotcha.
And there's a little bit of a Ganon battle at the end with Link because they have it's honestly I feel like it's kind of tacked on because it's this is another one of those Capcom games where Vadi usually is the main bad guy.
Yep.
As you experienced with Minish Cap.
Yes.
So anyways, maybe that's just more of an honorable mention, but he also technically shows up there. And it's a little, if we could really dissect, like, this is why he came back, this is why he didn't, but it's a little bit of a throwaway, in my opinion, where it's like, right at the end, they're like, and Ganon!
Yeah, like, they kind of just needed to throw him in there somewhere.
Which happens again with a different Capcom game, which we'll be speaking about in a little bit. Oh. So that's kind of where, and I would feel that let's do this. Let's go to Breath of the Wild under there. I do like this idea that Breath of the Wild does happen after all 3 timelines, but I also like this idea of Ocarina, Twilight Princess, and Breath of the Wild being a nice kind of thread through the canon. So why don't we discuss what happens in Breath of the Wild now? So
basically, 100 years before the game takes place, there's a prophecy that Ganon is going to come back, right?
Yep.
So
a little bit of that Wind Waker thing.
Yep. So they have to gear up again and kind of prepare. So they, Zelda is trying to regain her powers, her sealing power, so she can seal him away, because that's the thing to do, I guess, is just trap him in time or a realm or somewhere. It's always an honorable intention, but it never works, guys. Spoiler alert, it never works.
It never works because it can't, because we need more games. But
True.
If you think about it from each character's perspective, like Demise can't be defeated. He's a god, so you have to just seal Demise away.
That's true. So maybe it's the most pragmatic approach. So Zelda's working on trying to get her powers back. They're resurrecting the divine beast to protect everyone. And then all hell breaks loose anyway.
Yeah, it's true. Well, what's interesting is one of my favorite things about the story in Breath of the Wild is that Zelda is having a bit of a conflict. She is basically has to train her superpower. She has to become a superhero and learn how to do the sealing thing.
Yep.
And she can't quite find it. She can't figure it out. She doesn't really. So basically, I do like this aspect of Zelda in Breath of the Wild where it's like, what if someone tells you as a child, you're going to be amazing, or you have to be amazing. And all of a sudden, it's like the biggest stage fright in the world. You know what I mean? You're like, what do I have to do? I don't even know how to train for this or figure it out. It's scary.
Right.
And so while she's wondering if she can even fulfill what she needs to do, she gets kind of scientific and she gets really interested in the Guardians and essentially robots. She technically starts to consider using technology instead of mysticism to seal Ganon away. And I just think that's a really cool thread, a really cool storyline.
Unfortunately, she doesn't have enough time
It's true.
to work that out, because Ganon comes back and starts taking control over everything.
Well, I love that she gets a little nerdy and she starts to consider robots, but her dad's like, no, you got to do the thing.
You got to pray.
You got to pray, basically, right? Yeah. And there's some cool metaphors there, in my opinion.
So Ganon comes back, takes over the divine beast, and Zelda has to go to the castle to kind of do whatever she can to contain him there. And so that's the calamity Ganon that's roiling around the castle because she's not really letting him out. And so that's where the divine beasts come in, because you have to regain control of them, and et cetera, et cetera.
All the robots get taken over. Basically, Ganon Die Hard 4s all of Hyrule.
Nice.
He's like, I've hacked the system.
Yes.
Anyway.
That Zelda was previously trying to hack.
Trying to build. Yeah, she just didn't get enough of her firewalls built up yet.
Oh,
Code
Zelda.
firewalls, not literal ones.
Oh, geez. Poor girl.
That's what it was.
So I'm trying to remember. So the boss battles within the divine beasts, those are all forms of Ganon.
So Ganon is never Ganondorf in Breath of the Wild. There is no Ganondorf.
So like the opposite of Wind Waker?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
That's
That's
only like
nice
a
observation.
spiritual.
Only in spirit form. This calamity
Yes.
is, Calamity Ganon is just their way of. So and even Calamity Ganon, he's pig-like when he's the big smoke figure flying around.
Yes.
And
then when you're also battling him
at the very end is very much kind of literally the pig again, the boar or whatever. Actual Calamity Ganon is a strange creature, in my opinion, from a Resident Evil game. But but we don't have to focus on that too much. That's some kind of strange thing. I think it's more interesting that Ganon is expressed as these other spiritual identities, which are the creatures inside the beasts.
Yeah. So it's like, I wonder, he had been, I guess, depending on which timeline you're following, whatever, his defeat was just so powerful that he never got the chance to like get another corporal being to put together. So he just kind of has to express his I remember Breath of the Wild being all about his hatred with capital H. And that's kind of what's fueling him.
Yes.
It's his anger and hatred toward everyone.
I mean, Ganon almost isn't even a him in Breath of the Wild. Ganon is almost a force of nature.
It's like an it.
It's an it. Absolutely. I agree. In fact, isn't it interesting that the most literal version of Ganon is the pig at the end, which usually that's the spiritual version. Usually we have Ganondorf and then things get crazy as the pig.
Right.
Well, we actually reel it in of him being a big, huge pig at the end of this game. In fact, it's more chaotic and more energy. And if we're going to the Skyward Sword thing, this is basically I would say this is Demise stirring the soup a little bit. Like nothing really exists yet, but he can kind of materialize these different creatures and beasts, not creatures, not even beasts, but these spiritual forms of the other Ganons that are in the blights, the blights.
Yeah.
So blight, even the word blight is usually more of a force of nature type word.
Yeah. Maybe I'm thinking Demise has been gaining power while Ganon has kind of been decreasing after being defeated so many times. And then Demise, the force itself, the spirit itself is now like, I'm tired of this dude.
I'm going to take it a step further.
Yeah.
I think I like this.
I'm tired of this guy failing continuously.
Yeah, my puppet is getting worn. My puppet is breaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Demise is like just starting to build his own thing here.
Yeah.
We see that as Ganon. They call it Calamity Ganon, or the Ganon situation. So battle-wise, let's talk about the actual battle with Ganon. Well, do we want to talk about the blights? Oh, because they're technically Ganons, but maybe we just put those on the back burner right now.
Sure. The final one, I remember I had to do it a couple times. It wasn't the most crazy difficult, but it wasn't.
That's another Ganon battle where I've had situations where I get down there and sometimes I knock him out in a few hits, and then sometimes it's like he's really kind of giving me a hard time. It's all about which. So this Ganon battle, let's talk about this. Let's talk about mechanics. This Ganon battle is different than any other Ganon battle in any other Zelda game in that it is a Ganon that has kind of these pre-sequenced, like, now I'll fight you with my laser part. Now I'll fight you with my big claws.
That's right.
Now I'll climb up on the wall. It's a much more traditional video game villain, in my opinion. It's like these are the different attack cycles that I'm going to randomly cycle through.
Yes.
Which we see a lot in Resident Evil bad guys and other games too. Usually in Zelda, the final battle is a little bit more designed, a little bit more like do this to do this to do this to do this. I was a little underwhelmed by the random nature of this battle.
I remember seeing similar comments like online when just I saw people discussing this battle, they're like, wah wah. Like it was kind of, it seemed like not advanced enough to match the rest of the game. Like something was lacking from that final boss battle.
Yeah, and I think because these attack cycles are randomized, your experience could be very easy or very difficult depending on how the AI chooses to attack you when you're going against actual Calamity Ganon. It's still cool. He looks. So there is a bit of a Ganondorf face on Calamity Ganon. He kind of has a red beard and a little bit of a skull and a little. There's a wow, ooh, So you've seen the movie The Thing from like the 1970s.
I've definitely heard of it, but I have not seen it.
Okay, well, there's times it's an alien creature that can take over these creatures, and basically it's just trying to merge cells together, like human flesh cells and whatever. So sometimes you'll have these slightly humanoid versions of things, but there might be something's
off.
Everything's like reanimated, right? So I feel like Calamity Ganon is kind of in that vein a little bit, where his actual face is kind of a skull, kind of a face. It's not, I don't even know if there's necessarily a brain that's firing synapsi. What are you taking a look at here?
I'm looking at a picture.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, see that? Like, I think that's a the gem. The gem on the forehead.
Yep, on the forehead.
On Calamity Ganon.
It needs to protect his brain ouchie.
Interesting. Like, this is a physical creature for sure, but I don't even know if it's being controlled by a single consciousness. I got to be honest. All the different arms and legs and spider arms and creatures and claws that are hanging off this thing.
It feels like a lion's mane too.
It feels more like a machine, a puppet machine, than a creature. And I feel that supports this idea of Demise just like pulling junk together to try to get something going.
Yeah.
I like this.
Interesting. So yeah, I'm trying to, maybe it says a lot that I'm trying to like really remember this boss battle because I've done it and it wasn't that long ago because the game didn't come out that long ago. Right. But I was having a hard time remembering the part before the epic portion in the field, because I think that was the more effective battle to a point.
I'm hoping we talk about it in a second here. Would you like to introduce it?
Yeah. So basically after you beat like the indoor portion of Ganon, then you go outside and then he becomes this gigantic,
truly humongous,
huge thing.
Skyscraper.
Yes. Dark Beast Ganon. So you are on whatever horse you have. You just have a horse.
You're on your horse.
Because there's no real Epona, but
not unless you pay money.
Oh.
You got to buy it. It's it's one of the amiibos anyway.
Gotcha. So you're on your horse and you have to, this is one of those things that the game likes to do where it's like, here's an eyeball, shoot it.
Yeah, a little bit. Yes.
So it's kind of a bummer in that way, but it's really action packed and you have to run around and around and around. And if you get in front of this thing, like you're pretty much toast because it's going to shoot out. It's
true. There's a lot of suggested danger or performed danger, but it's not actually difficult it is not difficult to stay alive in this portion.
If you do certain things correctly, like if you don't go in front of it, if you just kind of circle around behind him over and over again, it'll most likely work out. I remember having a bit of trouble shooting the eyes sometimes, but that's because I'm not super accurate at that kind of thing. Okay. Also, the first time sometimes I am not so smart. And
okay, whatever. Let's keep going.
And I didn't realize that I had to switch which arrow. Actively switch it to the light arrows.
Yeah, okay.
So I was like, why is this not working?
These light arrows suck.
Yeah, because I think I was just using normal ones. And I was like, I have to choose that one.
Is it the light arrow?
Or the bow.
Or is it the bow? It's the light bow, technically, right?
It's the bow.
Yeah, but still.
So I was just using a regular one like a giant idiot.
I see. So I remember this scene. I remember very much enjoying this final battle with the skyscraper Ganon. Mm-hmm. I thought it was really epic and fun and cool. I agree with some of the criticisms that there's not a tremendous amount of. Some people have harshly said it's almost just a cutscene. Like it's almost just like you're riding around. Because, well, here's the thing. Ganon is standing there as this huge pig and he's stomping on the ground. And you really think like this is Godzilla. This thing could smash all of Hyrule. Mm-hmm. And it's suggested that can happen. But when you really look between the seams, that huge pig's not going anywhere. He's stomping around a little bit.
Right.
But it's not like you could sit there for 20 minutes in this battle and nothing is going to actually be destroyed.
Right.
In fact, some people, there's a little part where you can hack through one of the barrier walls by getting off your horse in just the right way.
Oh, really?
And some people I've seen on YouTube, and I've considered doing this myself, you can kind of clip through and then just walk around the rest of the game in the dark red cloud mode.
Oh my gosh.
And everybody's still just living and walking and working.
Everything's fine, right? You're not busy, Link, are you? Are you in the middle of something?
I understand that some of the maybe some of the NPCs are gone, but life is going on outside of that battle. And certainly that's not in canon. That's not part of the game.
That's not Ganon canon?
Yes, not Ganon. That's not Ganon canon. Very good. Love it. So I feel like this is one of those, a little bit like the big fish in Twilight Princess boss battle. This is one of those where it's like it feels big and epic, but I don't know if there's too much happening.
Sure.
But it feels like a lot is happening. So emotionally it's cool.
So it's effective in that way.
Yeah. I remember really liking it for those reasons.
And then you defeat him, and then the game goes back to before you defeat him. So.
Well, every Zelda game, you never actually, you finish it. Every Zelda game finishes, and then to play it more, you have to just go back to your previous save file, essentially.
Right.
Which is always a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah. But, overall, cool.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, so Ganon, I think we've deduced that Ganon is more of a force of nature in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, so we'll have to see what he comes back as
in Breaths of the Wild, Alex Sheehan said in our 2 episodes ago.
That's the sequel?
The sequel's Breaths of the Wild.
Another Breath of the Wild?
Trademark. Another Zelda podcast. Another Breath of the Wild. That's what we really need to do.
There you go. Maybe he'll come back as a humanoid again, just because.
So wouldn't that be interesting? You and I have talked about how it would be nice to have some actual temples in the next Zelda game. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be cool if now that we have built this kind of, have been used to playing in this more open world situation, certainly you and I have talked about this on other episodes about would be cool to return to some of our Zelda roots a little bit, like temples and stuff. I think it would be kind of neat if there was a dude, Ganondorf, introduced in the next one, yeah.
We'll see.
More of a character than a force of nature.
It seems to be the next logical step just because they kind of go back and forth or they try to mix it up a little. So we'll find out.
It'd be neat. Okay, so now let's wrap this up with the timeline where Link is defeated by Ganon in Ocarina.
Yes.
Big old Ganon pig comes out of the castle, smacks Link into the lava, and life goes on.
Yep. Everything's great.
Link, here, have the light. Okay, well, Ganon's going to take over, and that leads us to A Link to the Past for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, where apparently he has a full name now. Ganondorf Dragmire is what I saw.
Oh, really?
That's what I saw, yeah. In terms of this game specifically, but unless it's mentioned somewhere else.
Well, it's interesting, too, because in A Link to the Past, I feel like the main bad guy is actually that sorcerer, not even really Ganon so much, but it might be another one of these Zant Ganon things. So I think most of our listeners know that you and I have not played A Link to the Past very much at all.
Right.
In fact, we have homework between our seasons. You and I have both decided, and we've spoken to this a little bit, that we will play A Link to the Past over the break here. And our first review, maybe not our first episode, but our first review episode in season 2 will be A Link to the Past. It's time. We need to have this in our repertoire.
Yes, because our listeners are probably like, oh my God, how have you not played this game?
So many people love it. Every time I try to start playing it, I don't love it. I want to go into it with fresh eyes and really give it a chance and really complete this game and see what it's all about. So you and I have both, hey, how are you going to play it? I think I'm going to play it Virtual Console on my Wii U.
Same on my Wii.
On your Wii. Yep. Cool. Excellent. Alrighty. So A Link to the Past, I thought this Agahim character is really more the bad guy, but you might have some notes.
Yeah, no, that's what it seems to be. So basically what I read is that Ganon enters the Sacred Realm after defeating all of his minions and getting rid of everyone that might get in his way. Mm-hmm. Transforms into his boar self.
Wow.
And then gets sealed in the dark world by the sages. So another sealing of Ganon type situation. So then at this point, and I'm not exactly sure how, but he uses, however you say that, Aganim?
I thought it was Agahim, something like that.
Whatever it is.
We will know by season 2.
Yes, to try to get out of the dark world. So Aganim takes control of Hyrule.
Yeah.
And then sends the maidens, who are the descendants of the sages, to the dark world to kind of free Ganon, right? That's his job, is to get Ganon out of there. But then Zelda, who's one of the maidens, escapes.
Oh, wow.
spoiler alerts for when we play.
Getting interesting.
I guess. Then she gets sent to the Dark World eventually. I mean, I'm skipping a lot of stuff, but this is kind of the basic story.
Yeah.
She gets sent there, and then Ganon does break free, at least a little bit. He gets out of his most imprisoned state. Aghanim sends Link to the Dark World, who then frees the maidens.
So the furthest I've ever gone in A Link to the Past is entering the Dark World.
Gotcha.
And I kind of don't even remember the temples and dungeons to get there. I remember getting to the Dark World and I was like, I'm a bunny rabbit? What is happening? Like, I was kind of a hater when I played this game. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no. So I'm guessing there are 6 or 7 maidens, however, and this is your you have to do, you have to go to your 6 places. That's what I'm
sure
guessing. And then Link, eventually you'll battle Aghanim and defeat that person, and then Ganon at that point is like, okay, time for me to finish the deal.
And it is Ganon. He's a big pig. He stands on 2 feet. He's very much aesthetically, he's very much like the Ganon that's in the original The Legend of Zelda. I'm now starting to recall screenshots of Ganon in this Super Nintendo game.
Okay.
I have seen him. He's big blue pig.
Yeah, I'm looking at a little picture.
Bounces around.
Yep. So
okay, yeah, that's right.
Then he goes to the Pyramid of Power, which seems to be the theme in a few.
So I think I remember the main Hyrule Castle in A Link to the Past becomes a pyramid when you go into the Dark World, something like that.
Gotcha. And then you battle Ganon himself, which I again know nothing about because I have not played this.
It'll be fun to play that battle.
Yeah.
It will, to get there. I'm sure that it's a riff on the Ganon battle in the original The Legend of Zelda because the Super Nintendo game is kind of the upgraded version of that original The Legend of Zelda.
Sure.
And that'll be very excited. I think it's a single screen experience. He's there and you fight him in the middle.
Okay. It definitely involves silver arrows. I know that much. Excellent. So, you have your theme of using your silver, gold, light, whatever.
Got it.
Special arrows.
Cool. So, I mean, that happens and then Ganon's defeated and life goes on. And then that leads us to a bit of an honorable mention Ganon appearance in the Oracle games.
Yes.
Are you aware of this? Because I actually wasn't until I did this research.
Oh, I definitely wasn't until I looked this up. No, because I've never played those games either.
So I have played Ages. I played that 10 years ago. I'm looking forward to playing it again for our review episode eventually. I'm in the middle of Seasons right now. I had to put I was playing Seasons and I got about halfway through and then I got busy with some other 6.5 stuff because we have some new shows coming out next season. And so I'm kind of hanging on to Ages or Seasons and I'm excited to get back into it.
Gotcha.
But when I beat Ages, when I was doing this research, I was like, Ganon's not in these games. Apparently, Ganon gets unlocked when you link the 2 games together.
Oh.
He's like a bonus. Twin Rova, our friends, Twin Rova, resurrect him or bring him back.
Yes.
His mommy brings him back.
Yeah, his mommy.
And there's a Ganon battle in presumably both of these games at the end.
Yeah, well, apparently Twin Rova sacrifice themselves to bring him back. So they're trying to and it just says the series, so I'm not sure which one of these
games
it is.
It probably happens at the end of each game.
Oh, okay.
It's probably like a tack-on thing at the end after you defeat the 2 main bad guys from each, which they're kind of underwhelming. If I remember, I have it in my notes here. It's Viren and General Onyx. They're just bad guys.
Oh, okay. So when Twin Rova sacrifice themselves, that creates Ganon's resurrection. But then because his mothers are the ones that were defeated in order to bring him back, he kind of goes cuckoo bananas because of that.
Yeah, I've heard this.
Yeah, and so they call the place that I was getting this information from said he became a mindless beast. So,
yeah. I mean, it really is just a way, mechanically in the game, it doesn't necessarily feed the narrative very much. You can beat these games and have these other bosses, but at the end, if you link them together at any point, I understand, which maybe we'll have to try because I do have the physical cartridges of each of these games.
Okay.
I was considering playing them on some kind of virtual console situation, but maybe we should try to link them sometime eventually just to see what this is all about.
Yeah.
He kind of just comes in and attacks. There isn't much of a storyline or a narrative to feed his motivation.
Sure.
So I think this mindless killing machine thing kind of fits in.
He just crazy.
Mm-hmm. It's almost bonus content. So let's move on. Link's Awakening happens. Ganon doesn't have anything to do with that. The next time Ganon
I thought, and again, I know I played this game, but I didn't get to the very, very, very end. So sorry. But I read that it takes the form of the shadow of Ganon at some point. Like, doesn't it take different forms? And then I think the shadow of Ganon is like one of the forms.
I guess so. I always thought that was just, so I'm kind of embarrassed. I always thought that was just like, oh, those graphics look like Ganon.
Oh, well, there you go. So it's like, it's not actually Ganon. So
know.
yeah, he's not technically in the game, but it like takes on different
Fair enough.
forms.
That's good to know. Do you have any other notes about that? Because now I feel kind of uninformed about
that's
Link's
it.
Awakening. All right.
Just that he's just kind of like winked at or nodded at in that game, but not really part of it.
I see. Then it gets a little weird. Then we have A Link Between Worlds, which is basically a direct sequel to A Link to the Past, and this is where we get Yuga Ganon.
Yes. So this is another wizard situation, which he likes to do. He likes to use his semi-powerful guys to suck in more power himself. So he uses the evil wizard Yuga.
I was taken by the similarity to Yiga with this word. I
sure.
really thought like, is it Yiga Ganon? But I think this is just a coincidence.
Yeah.
So Yuga Ganon, neither you and I have played A Link Between Worlds. It's another one that's on we have like 2 or 3 games that are on our kind of, what is it, list of shame or list of like that we haven't played. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not sure what the expression is. So I can't speak to this boss battle too much right now.
Basically, it's another puppet that uses, that does all the work for Ganon and then uses that power to resurrect Ganon. That's another one of those stories, which we've talked about several times. And then Yuga joins with Ganon. So it's like
that's what happens.
One being, sort of, right?
Right. So Yuga Ganon, in my opinion, aesthetically looks kind of like a mix between Ganondorf and the pig Ganon we know. He's up on 2 legs, but has kind of the mane of almost Demise, in my opinion.
Okay.
Like the big red locks, but I don't know.
And so he gets the Triforce. I'm reading this because I haven't played this one. So he takes the Triforce of Wisdom from the Low Rule Princess Hilda. Reading all of this, I'm just like, what is going on?
So there's high rule and low rule in that game. There's always, so often there's the light side and a dark side.
Sure.
Let's go to another version of this land.
And then after that, at that point, you battle him after the Triforce of Wisdom, because obviously he's then trying to get the Triforce of Courage from Link to join them all together, have the complete set.
Yep.
And then at that point, you battle him, but I know nothing about that battle.
So this game is retailing for like $20 these days. And man, I feel like eventually, like I said, we're going to have to get our hands on a 3DS. That's the only reason you and I haven't played this is we both have DSs. It's a 3DS only game when it came out 5 years ago or whatever. So I think maybe eventually we'll find a way to play this game and it'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. We definitely should play it after we play A Link to the Past, which will be true because this is a direct sequel to A Link to the Past.
Okay.
And I think it'll be a lot of fun. It has great reviews. Apparently you can play the temples out of order. So it was alluding, it was getting closer to Breath of the Wild. And actually now that I think about it, perhaps after we play A Link Between Worlds, that might inform us on our thoughts on how temples and dungeons could work in a Breath of the Wild environment.
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
That'll be cool.
So that happens, Yuga Ganon, and then last but not least, we have our 2 final actual games: The Legend of Zelda,
yes,
the original one, with the big pig.
Surprising how late it comes in the timeline and the sequence of us talking about it, but
yes, there's a lot of history up at this point when The Legend of Zelda happens. And so the actual Ganon battle, I've played it. I think at the time it was probably a big battle. It's wholly underwhelming compared to everything we've already discussed. It's really he basically just dematerializes, shoots a bunch of sparky circles at you, and then materializes, and then you try to whack him with your silver arrows and hit him with your sword. And this Ganon is actually not that difficult to defeat. It's much harder getting to Ganon. The castle, the 8th dungeon, is very tricky. The 8th dungeon is so large it's almost the size of the overworld, by the way.
Oh wow.
And like as far as counting the number of screens. And that was really the tricky part. Once you get to Ganon, most people that I see play the game usually beat him on the first try, actually.
Some of them are like that. A couple of the Legend of Zelda games are like that, where you're kind of like, oh, that's it? Okay. But the rest is so epic that it's like, okay, well, that's fine.
He's just a big blue pig, again, up on 2 hind legs. And that's all I can say. I don't know. Do you have any lore comments about him?
It just says he's returned to life prior to the game and then invades Hyrule and obtains the Triforce of Power, because that's his thing that he does. Zelda breaks the Triforce of Wisdom into 8 pieces. That's what you got to go hunt down, blah, blah, blah. Then he captures Zelda, holds her hostage.
And then the game starts.
Okay, gotcha. And then it says he uses the technique of darkness against Link. So what's that? Do you know what that is?
Maybe that's just their fancy way of how he like appears and disappears.
Okay.
Because the level that you play him in, when you find him, it's a little misleading. It's basically the tiles on the floor look like a skull. And where the skull is not, the tiles are black. So you're kind of like, is that a hole? Is that a pit? Eventually you can walk on the black parts. It's a bit rough, to be honest. I'm sure at the time it was a master work of coding. But yeah, basically you're just on a flat plane and he kind of appears and doesn't appear, comes in and out and shoots stuff at you.
Gotcha.
And then we kind of have like a cameo for Ganon, last but not least, in The Adventures of Link.
Yes.
Which is absolutely a direct sequel. That is the exact same Link that is in The Legend of Zelda. Miyamoto has confirmed this.
Okay.
And it's a little odd because when you die in The Adventures of Link, there's a screen, which is the silhouette of Ganon, and of course this kind of famous like rah, 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 laugh that happens, and it simply says "Game over, Ganon returns" or something like that, or Ganon, and that's all you really get because the actual final boss in The Adventures of Link is actually a Dark Link. Well, technically, it's this Thunderbird creature that flies around, and then after you beat the Thunderbird, then you just battle a dark version of yourself.
Okay.
So Ganon kind of never shows up. He's just implied, unless, you just breathed in as if there's more info.
Well, the whole point of the game, I think, is that his minions and the magician and whatever are trying to resurrect him.
Oh.
And so the only point where he gets resurrected is if you die. So then that's why you don't beat him.
Because he doesn't exist.
Because he doesn't exist.
If you die, then he comes to be.
Apparently, they need to spill Link's blood on Ganon's ashes to revive him, which is
cryptic.
Yeah.
But that's kind of lining up with not Middle Earth. I almost said Middle Earth, but like the Castle Time stuff. You know what I mean? This is back when we've spoken about this, when these games were very much inspired by European Castle Times. I'm sounding a bit like an idiot right now saying Castle Times, but you know what I mean? Medieval, not Middle Earth, medieval times, stuff like that.
Well, I'm sure you just don't want to say medieval times because it's probably copyrighted or something. So Castle Times is fine, Dave.
So Ganon kind of shows up there. If you succeed in The Adventures of Link, Ganon never comes back.
Right.
And then until Calamity Ganon, until Demise is like, that's it. He basically, what does he do? The main bad guy in the Avengers games, in the Avengers movies.
I am the wrong person to ask about that because
the purple guy.
I don't watch them.
I enjoyed them to a certain degree. Thanos. He basically, Demise kind of Thanoses everything, doesn't he? And he's kind of like, I'm going to do it myself in Breath of the Wild.
Do it right, I'll do it myself.
Basically. Oh, that would be neat to have Demise come back in the Breath of the Wild sequel.
Ooh.
Because if we were to interpret the Calamity Ganons to being Demise warming up, so to speak, it'd be cool to see him in the next sequel.
Interesting.
But we have no idea.
Ooh, so many possibilities.
Mm-hmm. There it is.
That's about it.
We've
for
done
Ganon. He's kind of a big part of the game.
I felt
Most
like
of them.
So in future seasons we might try to get clever and have our season finales be like live episodes or something. We have a year to put that together. But for this season, Kate, I felt like, well, what's kind of thematically appropriate? The final boss is our final episode. Let's talk about Ganon.
Yeah,
that was fun.
Yeah, it's he's an interesting person and being, and I hope we get. Regardless of what form he takes in future games, I hope we get more backstory, more reason for, more motivation, more than just like, I'm hungry for power. Okay, well, fine. But, we have these games are capable of so much more now, obviously, with all the Zelda story that they went into in Breath of the Wild. Like, it'd be cool to get a story of his childhood even, or, him growing up, coming to power, whatever. Like, that'd be really cool to get more story.
Oh, that is neat. Now we're just having fun. But so I just got done saying, like, what if Demise comes back in the sequel? That's cool. That would take us into that definitely closer to the force of nature thing again, I think. But we also thought about in this episode, like, oh, what if Ganon was just a guy again in the next sequel? It would be neat if he was a character. That's also, just a character. We do see him growing or something,
and then you see Demise influence him in some kind of way or possess him, or it'd be cool to learn more about this guy.
We could speculate all day long, but I like where this is heading. We probably have another 4 or 5 years to really get this.
I know.
Well, I don't know. They turned Majora's Mask around within a year. We might, maybe 2 or 3 years from now. Well, we're already 2 years in for Breath of the Wild existing.
I know. It's crazy to think about how
maybe another year or so.
We'll see.
Very exciting. All right, Kate. Well, let's get out of here, everybody. We will see you in a month or so. We're going to be coming back in January. Very excited. Hope everyone has a happy holiday or a happy winter or time off. And in the meantime, I think we'll still be active on our Discord and stuff like that. You can chat with us. You and I are going to be playing A Link to the Past, so maybe we can comment and tweet about that a little bit as we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm very excited to start a season 2.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for listening to season 1 and for leaving us comments and questions and thoughts and reviews, and keep it up. We love to hear from you guys.
It has been humbling and charming to see this show grow in this season and see all of the support to the point where we're borderline making friends with our listeners at this point, which is really cool. You know what I mean?
It is so cool.
They're not just anyway. We get more tweets and things than I can even keep up with sometimes, and that is a true gift. And so it's really awesome that people are enjoying this show.
Yeah.
I'm having a blast making it. Kate, you and I, when we started this show, we were just like, well, we kind of just want to record something. We just wanted to talk about stuff and give it a try, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
This has come together this way. So if people do want to get in touch with you during our break here, what would be the best way to do that?
Just find me on Instagram. I haven't taken a picture in a while, but I'm on there, I swear, and I check it. I only take cat pics on Instagram.
Fantastic. People are also welcome to chat with us through our Messenger and stuff like that on Facebook, where you can find us just by searching Another Zelda Podcast. Personally, I am at Raptor Paint on Twitter and Instagram, and the show is on Twitter, as I said earlier, at Another Zelda Pod, on Instagram at Another Zelda Podcast, and you can find us on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play by searching Another Zelda Podcast. And you can check out our website. I am having a meeting 2 days from now. I don't even know if you know this yet, Kate, with Lizzie Alstad, who from episode 16.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't say this yet, but we are putting together a plan to have written blogs coming out on our website. Lizzie's going to put together a couple articles. We think we're still building this a little bit. And I actually reached out to our kind of now friend, still saying Shane, on Twitter the other day, because he writes for video games.
Oh, cool.
And I said, would you write a couple posts for us if we really can pull this together? And he said, yeah, I think I could.
Awesome.
So perhaps we can even get that rolling during the break here. And then when season 2 hits, it's going to be episodes. I think we're going to start having articles. So flipping excited about what's happening.
Gonna take over the world like Calamity Ganon.
So excited with what's happening with this show. And it's really cool. And thank you so much for being a part of it, Kate.
Oh, happy to be part of it.
All right. So I guess we just do the okay bye thing. I'll see you. Have a great holiday, Kate. I don't know if I'm actually going to physically see you until January. We'll see how this goes.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Okay. Bye.
Bye.